Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Mishawaka. I want you to keep this area in mind. We'll be talking about this later. On April 20th, 1837, two Michigan clergymen, the Reverend Charles B. Stout, rector of St. Stephen's Church in Edwardsburg, and the Reverend Henry F. M. Whitesides of St. James Church in Constantine went south into northern Indiana to do missionary work. They held an organizational meeting for an Episcopal church on the outskirts of Mishawaka in St. Joseph County and conducted services for 13 people in a schoolhouse. St. Paul's Episcopal Church, the oldest formally organized parish in the Episcopal Diocese of Northern Indiana, began on that date. No specific records exist on those on St. Paul's first vestry, but by 1842 the congregation purchased property at the corner of First and Spring Streets and conveyed it to Hiram Doolittle, John H. Orr, J. E. Hollister, Samuel P. Knight, and Norman Eddy, who were listed as vestry and wardens of St. Paul's. A year later, the church building that came to be known informally as the Church on the Hill was completed under the leadership of the Reverend Richard S. Adams and was consecrated in 1845 by Bishop Jackson Kemper. The frame church in Greek Revival style contained the first belfry bell in Mishawaka, which was cast in 1836. According to one source, the bell was later sold for junk when the church was sold in 1906. Church leaders brought the first organ reportedly from Saratoga Springs, New York, sometime before 1850. Later, they installed a Van Dinter pipe organ manufactured right here in Mishawaka. This organ, operated by a hand air pump, was eventually moved to the new church, along with some of the stained glass windows. Finally, John T. Niles, the senior warden, embellished those original structure when he donated a rectory, begun in 1872 and completed in 1876. The early years were not without difficulties. In 1883, members of the congregation called for the closure of the parish, since no vestry election had occurred for 5 or 6 years. Despite these challenges, Bishop David Buell Knickerbacker sent the Reverend Augustine Prentice of South Carolina to serve at St. Paul's, along with St. John's in Elkhart. No one even came to meet Prentice when his train came to town, yet he had a full congregation at his first service on Sunday, March 9th. Preaching on the duty of the hour, Prentice revitalized the congregation, and by the time of Bishop Knickerbacker's visit on Sunday, July 15th, he had prepared 16 persons for confirmation. In 1885, the bishop moved him to Indianapolis. In October 1885, Reverend J. Gorton Miller, B.D., assumed charge of St. Paul's jointly with the missionary responsibility of St. John's, Bristol. The working organizations of the parish consisted of the Wardens and Vestry, a ladies' society, and a young ladies' altar guild. The women's organizations raised funds for current expenses, repairs, and improvements. In addition, Miller organized a Sunday school. At the beginning of Lent, 1886, he had established the custom of celebrating the Holy Eucharist at every Sunday morning service, more frequently than was typical in the Episcopal Church at that time. Miller also introduced the use of Eucharist vestments of plain white linen, wafer bread, the mixed chalice, a little water with the wine, and the custom of the eastward position of the altar. On January 1st, 1899, after the new diocese had been formed, Bishop John Hazen White sent the Reverend Hamilton D. B. McNeil to take charge of St. Paul's. The parish was free of debt and financially independent at that time. During the next year, the vestry ordered extensive improvements to the building, including the installation of electric lights, enlarging the choir, and setting a new altar. The gift of Mrs. J. A. Roper and Mrs. E. A. Uringen, The rectory also received gifts of a new furnace and bathroom. During the period 1898 to 1902, some of the wardens and vestry of St. Paul's included H. Hosford. I'm not going to read all these names. McNeil resigned on February 12, 1902, and was succeeded that same year by Reverend John Adams Lynn, nephew of John Adams of Chicago Hull House fame. In 1905, the church on the hill on Spring Street was sold, and the parish made plans to build a new church and rectory on 2nd Street, now Lincoln Way East, near the new Cedar Street Bridge. The old church was removed to South Union Street and eventually remodeled into a residence. The construction of the new church came about through the untiring efforts of Lynn and the progressiveness of the congregation. The complete cost of the structure was $15,000. Schneider and Austin of South Bend served as architects, and the construction contract was awarded to Heiss and Heiner of Mishawaka. The rector laid the cornerstone on July 17, 1906. He fixed the goal of having the work sufficiently completed to hold the dedication on St. Paul's Day, a task that at times required up to 20 workers. Lynn celebrated the final services in the old church on January 20, 1907, and he conducted the first service in the new church on Easter Sunday of that year. Bishop White dedicated the church. The windows on either side of the new church were brought from the old one and remain splendid examples of 19th century stained glass. The windows over the entrance, commissioned for the new church by Mrs. E.G. Eberhardt, depict the conversion of St. Paul on the road to Damascus. The window above the altar, given by Mrs. J.A. Roper, represents the risen Lord. The present altar is a larger copy of the original first altar and is adorned with the original symbols. Members of the Bishop Knickerbocker Guild erected the rood screen, designed by Oscar Brubaker in memory of Mrs. Nancy E. Sherman Jurgen. In 1916, the hand-carved figures from Switzerland were added in 1960 by Alfred S. Ostrom and Mrs. M. H. Goodman in memory of their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Charles A. Ostrom. The statue of St. Charles I of England, King and Martyr, carved in Italy, was given in memory of Alfred S. Ostrom in 1964. In 1908, Lynn left the parish, and he was later killed in action in France in 1918, the first of the so-called fighting chaplains to meet death in World War I. His service is commemorated by a plaque in the sanctuary. The Reverend Lewis C. Rogers began his 25th five-year service as rector later in 1908 that same year. Charles Fairbanks, the Vice President of the United States under Theodore Roosevelt, visited Mishawaka and dined in the Undercroft at a meal hosted by the Bishop Knickerbocker Guild. During the next quarter century, the parish experienced significant change when Bishop Campbell Gray named St. Paul's as his pro-cathedral in 1925, an honor it would hold until 1951. The bishop had somewhat grandiose plans to build a magnificent new cathedral on the corner of Cedar and Lincoln Way, designed in the Gothic Revival style by the renowned architect Ralph Adams Cram. However, the Great Depression of 1930 through 1936 and subsequent World War II defeated any chance of realizing his dream. When insufficient funds could be raised, the parish did acquire the corner lot as a result of these plans. However, J. Alvin Scott donated it with the provision that it revert to his heirs if not built upon in 25 years, though his heirs later released his provision. This is one of the oldest pictures I can find of the church, and I wanted you to focus on that part of the church from earlier. So let's look at it in this older picture. It's all completely ground level. Now, there's a ramp next to the building. And do you spot what I spot? I see windows underground that have been bricked over. And I also see newer windows. How can I tell the other ones are older? Because of the brick casing around the windows. It matches the wet windows on the upper floor. Let's take a look at that. Here we are looking at the church on Google Earth. And you can see the first story windows all have an arched brick enclosing. And on the lower windows that were originally underground also have the arched brick. So I want to know, why would they build windows underground? Here's a quick look at the rest of the church. It's not very big. So let me know what you think. Why would windows be built underground before they had the ground dug out there? So I guess that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, seek the truth.